Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. It's me, Brenda Snow, back with you for another wonderful chat in the I Am Patient series. I hope that you are having a great day and have had a great week. And we have another incredible individual to chat to today that is going to share her perspective. You may remember last week's guest, Jasmine, who's absolutely inspirational. Well, these two are the dynamic duo, partners in crime, the founders of The Breast of Us, and we couldn't talk to one without talking to the other. So
Yeah.
let me get down to it, and you're going to want to ask questions. So let me tell you here, and you know me, I got to take out my old lady glasses to get it all right. So Marissa Thomas, she is coming up on that really important 5 year stage. So 4 year breast cancer survivor from the great state of Washington. She was diagnosed in November of 2015, only at the age of 35. And you'll recall that Jasmine was also very young with stage 2 high grade invasive ductal carcinoma in situ, or DCIS, 35% ER positive, just shy of, again, that 36th birthday. Her active treatment in 2016 was a lumpectomy, chemotherapy, radiation, 2 reconstruction surgeries. And while in treatment, Marissa turned to social media as a way to get connected, um, find other people who shared her story. Because, again, as a woman of color and so young, um, a lot of unmet need. And what these two fantastic women are doing, I hope, is changing the face of breast cancer treatment. So welcome, Marissa. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I know you are also a program coordinator and medical assistant. You have a BS in healthcare administration. So not
Yes.
only are you a cancer survivor, but you do sort of can wear the hat and have the perspective of somebody that works in healthcare. Tell me a
Right.
little bit about yourself and your breast cancer journey, because it's pretty spectacular and very moving.
Thank you. So, as you stated, I work in healthcare. I've been in healthcare for about the past 15, 16 years. And of course, I was diagnosed in November of 2015 with breast cancer. I found the lump myself after getting out of the shower one morning.
Were
And
you
I
doing self exam, or did things just look a little topsy turvy?
No, I so I will say, excuse me, I actually have always loved my breasts. So I
Yeah.
always know the way how they, how they feel. And I was literally just putting lotion on. And as I was putting lotion on, I felt the lump. And right then and there, I kind of just known that something was off. I never had lumpy breasts, even around the time of my cycle. I never felt any lumps or bumps. So at that point, I just knew something was wrong. And I tried to like keep telling myself, like, maybe, maybe I have a
Yeah.
clogged milk duct, even though my son was like 13, but maybe there was just some rare occurrence, you know? Um, but I think just being in healthcare helped me accelerate the process of being diagnosed and getting treatment and getting everything on the board. I've heard so many stories of women who have went to their providers and their providers haven't listened to them, or they get diagnosed and then they have to wait a whole month later to see the breast surgeon or oncologist. So I'm actually thankful to be in the place that I'm at, but I also want to empower other women to be able to have that same type of power and speak with their medical teams to get the same type of treatment.
Yeah, you absolutely have to. And I've heard a lot of these stories where also I felt a lump and I was so scared I didn't want to go get it checked.
Right.
What do you say to women that are kind of like in that headspace?
I would definitely say I get being scared of the unknown because we're all scared of the unknown, right? Especially
Yeah.
living in the times that we're in right now with COVID. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, right?
No. Yeah.
But the thing is you know your body. So if something is off, you are your best advocate. And I would rather be safe than sorry. So just please go get it checked, whatever it is. It could be something very small. I mean, it could be something, as in my case, it may be cancer, but at least if you get on top of it ahead of time, then your chances of making it onto the other side and going through your treatment are a whole lot better versus waiting and then you happen to wake up and it's, your tumor is maybe like 8 centimeters and your treatment journey could be completely different from that point.
Yeah, I agree. My dad said something to me when I was diagnosed with MS, and I thought it was so incredibly selfish. But, 27 years later, I get it. He was like, you know what, Brenda? Nobody's going to care about you like you care about you.
Exactly.
And that's always stuck in the back of my head. Like, I need one that needs to get my butt moving for being my own advocate, like you said. All right. So tell me what happens. You feel the lump, you go to the doctor, and then, what happened next?
I went to the doctor. What's funny is 2 weeks before I found the lump, I actually had a physical. And as my doctor was doing a breast exam, her and I both kind of felt something. And she just said, oh, it's probably nothing. You're too young, which we all hear. And, we'll just, not worry about it. I remember walking out of that appointment and texting my sister and saying, oh, my doctor felt something in my breast. And my sister saying to me like, oh, well, people kind of get lumpy breast around their cycle. So maybe that's what it is. And I'm like, okay, well, my cycle probably is starting soon. So, but yeah, fast forward, diagnosed.
Mammogram or
I went and had a mammogram. I actually called my primary care provider when I felt the lump. So I felt the lump on a Saturday. I called them on Monday and they couldn't get me until Thursday. And I was just like, that's unacceptable. I can't wait till Thursday to figure out what this is. Mm-hmm. And working in healthcare, I called the medical office that I used to work at, which is a primary care office, and told my boss, my old boss at the time, what was going on. And they got me in the next day and did an exam. They said, okay, well, let's get you in for a mammogram and ultrasound. They did everything in their power to call and get me in the next day to have a mammogram and ultrasound, which I know that that's unheard of. A lot of places you can't do that. You have to wait a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks, for that to happen.
Yeah.
Went in the next day, had a mammogram ultrasound. The ultrasound tech, unfortunately, she was spending a lot of time by my lymph nodes underneath my armpit. And I was like, this isn't good. And I remember her taking the probe off and saying, she said, okay, so I'm pretty sure that this is cancer. We need to bring you back in for a biopsy. And I'm just like, what? I'm like, how do you know it's cancer? And she said, well, usually if it's a cyst, then it's smooth around on the outside, but yours is jagged. So I'm sure it's cancer.
Right.
And I can't believe she said that to me.
No, they're not supposed to say those things, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember going into the waiting room and then just calling my sister, just bawling. Like, I can't believe, like, she's telling me that I have cancer. But the office that I worked at before, when I had called my boss and told her what was said, she called over to the office and got me in for a biopsy that Friday. And then the following Monday, I already had my diagnosis. The doctor that I used to work for, she called me that night. I just remember I was sitting in LA Fitness parking lot, getting ready to go work out, and she called me and I knew exactly what the call was. And the first thing she said to me was like, I'm sorry that this has to be your story, but we're definitely going to write this chapter in the best way we know how. And that from there just started my journey.
It's so scary. And you're already getting people typing in. And my producer just handed me something. I had the same story. So I know that this connection is so important and so real. I mean, it's been my life's mission too. Talking to somebody that's been there or just has that perspective, it can really sort of make or break, how your mindset is when you have to go through things like this. So, were they right away? How was your chemo and radiation? How long were you on that? I know you're ER positive. So why don't you explain to our listeners what that means and the why the protocol was different than, like, again, Jasmine's last week, right?
Right. So my tumor was 35% ER positive, meaning that it was estrogen positive. So it was driven by the estrogen hormone. That is rare. Usually if your tumor is hormone positive, it is over 50%. And so since that was so rare in my case, they actually treated me as though I was triple negative. and not as I was ER positive. And triple negative, for everybody that doesn't know, that just means that the type of breast cancer that you have is not hormone receptive. So they have different ways that the oncologists treat your cancer, depending on how it is hormone receptive. But since mine was only 35%, they kind of just threw what my oncologist said. They just threw the kitchen sink at me and treated me like I was triple negative.
Yeah. What was chemo like? Brutal.
It was rough. It definitely was rough. I wouldn't even wish it on my worst enemy at all. Just being in healthcare, I knew that it was going to be rough. So just bearing down and, the analogy that I say is that I just put my head down and just bear through so I can make it to the other side. But chemo, it's being sick, it's the side effects, it's the fatigue, of course, losing your hair, which that's a part of it. But they give a lot of people right now, especially young women that get really aggressive breast cancer, they give you adriamycin and Cytoxin, AC, or the Red Devil, as we like to call it.
Yeah.
And that is it's rough. It's very rough. I'm sure anybody that has been on that combination can tell you that as well.
Yeah, I think you're just a warrior. So what did the doctors tell you? I think in reading your bio and your background, but you had a bunch of doctors say to get a mastectomy. How did you go through that decision tree?
So I actually did my breast surgery before I started chemo, just because I was in the mindset I wanted to hurry up and just get the tumor out of me.
Yeah.
To me, being inside of me, regardless if I was doing chemo, I didn't want it anymore. I just wanted to. I used to call it Bertha, so I'm like, let's get Bertha out of here.
Yeah.
So I don't want her in my breast
She's
anymore.
a bitch, right?
Exactly. I was gonna say that, but I wasn't sure if it was okay to say it. So I had 2 doctors tell me that I should get a mastectomy. My tumor was 4 centimeters, and they said that was really large, and that I might as well, because it was so aggressive, I might as well just have a double mastectomy. And I loved my breasts, and I just said no. I couldn't take it mentally of having, my breast cut off. I just wasn't ready at that point in time. And I remember my oncologist, I said, the only way that I would get a mastectomy is if you could tell me that I don't have to do chemotherapy. And he said, no, your cancer's too aggressive. You would still have to do chemo. And I said, well, then you're not going to cut my breast off then. So I went and had a lumpectomy. My breast surgeon, she is amazing. Anybody in the Seattle area, you can DM me and I will give you her number. And she put me back together so well, you would never even know that I had that big of a tumor inside of my breast. And I remember after waking up from my surgery, she said, I'm glad that you held your guns to this and didn't want to get a mastectomy. She said, because we were able to take your tumor out and get clear margins, and nothing had spread to your lymph nodes at that point. And
that's great news. So it was all contained. You didn't have any lymph node involvement.
No, I did not.
That's great news. That's great news. And I think that's another thing. We're working on kind of the fall guests, and I want a few more healthcare professionals on here that are like those good doctors. Like you just, I could see you light up when you talked about her, and I'm thinking of one for me too in my journey. But no, they make all the difference. And I've seen, believe me, in the 22 years I've been at this, I've seen from stuff that I'm thinking like, you should never practice again in your life, to people that, you literally want to just remember them in your prayers every day. That they're just so freaking amazing. So I'm so glad that you had that experience. For those of you, again, who are maybe just tuning in or tuning in late, we have Marissa, a breast cancer survivor, and also one of the co-founders of The Breast of Us. Last week, you met her co-founder, Jasmine, and they are doing great things, not only about breast cancer awareness, but particularly on younger women and a focus on women of color. Again, really unmet needs. So please spread the word about this great organization. I know too, on the website, there's a gal named Christina who's sort of near and dear to you and had a big impact on your life. Tell me about her.
She did. It's funny, you're bringing it up and it makes me actually want to cry a little bit, but I met Christina in the middle of my chemotherapy. Her and I were both diagnosed around the same time. And so we connected at the same time. And I met her on Instagram. As a lot of people probably know, a lot of us, especially now, we're connecting online. But even during that time, that was the only point in time that I could connect with somebody. And we met on Instagram and we just talked every single day. She had 2 sons. I had a son, so we can connect about being mothers. We met each other probably about 2-3 months after we met online. I went down to San Francisco. She lives in the Bay Area, so I met her there. And it was just somebody that I needed at the time, not realizing that I needed somebody, but just knowing then that I needed her. And we both completed treatment at the same time. And about a year after us completing treatment, unfortunately, her cancer had returned and metastasized. At that point, stage 4, our metastatic breast cancer wasn't talked about a lot. So we both didn't really know much about it. And, the cancer kind of just ravaged her body. A lot of her providers, medical providers, they kind of listened to her, but not that much. And it was frustrating us living apart and not being, just hearing some of the stories that she would tell me. And it's just like, so why isn't anybody listening to this? And I remember around the same time that her and I had met and her cancer had metastasized, I had met other women online too, who were women of color who were also being diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And a lot of them were triple negative. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why isn't anybody researching us? There has to be a reason why all of us young women of color are being diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. And I remember asking my oncologist, I'm just like, nobody even offered me any type of clinical trials, like when I was done, or I have a genetic mutation. And I remember telling my oncologist, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that this is what gave me my breast cancer. And she told me, no, there's no way possible. There's not enough research out there. And I'm just like, okay, well, hello, you can research me. I'm here, I'm available.
Yeah.
But even back to Christina, the cancer just ravaged her body. And unfortunately, she passed away. And that was one of my goals, is just to get us out there in the forefront as women of color and having more research done with us and us participating in more research, because I don't want to have anybody else go through what
Christina did. No, you shouldn't. And this is, with everything that we've seen in the last few months with racial injustice, and hopefully people talking about white privilege and unconscious bias. I mean, talk to me about why you think women of color, Latino, Asian, Black, why are they being marginalized in the healthcare system? And what can we do to stop this? It's not okay. It's unacceptable. Why do you think it's happening?
Well, there's always these preconceived notions that we all have, right? Whenever you see somebody, and a lot of it is learned behavior, how you were raised and you were grown up, seeing your parents, your grandparents, anybody in your family, everybody has a preconceived notion of a certain person until you actually sit down and talk with them. And of course, myself, working in healthcare, I remember when the whole George Foreman thing had went on, and, once a week we have a team meeting at work, and I work in a small group, and the doctor that I work for, he was like, well, let's talk about this. And we had a talk, and he said, that as medical providers, we all have our own preset biases about patients before we step into the room. He said, but the difference is you having that preset bias and not placing action behind it when you walk into the room and sit down with the patient. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that we all have to realize. It's, even just you and I, for example, right? Yeah. I probably would have never just sat down and talked with you just about anything, because it's just, it's not necessarily that we're not friends, but, we just probably wouldn't have talked regardless. But sitting here, it's just like talking to one of my girlfriends and having a nice little chat. Right. And setting that preset bias behind you and not having that when, as a medical provider, you walk into the room and speak with them. I think when it comes to Black women in general, or Black patients in general, there's this preconceived notion that we always want some type of pain meds. I remember I've had a lot of surgeries, and I remember providers just telling me like, oh, you'll be fine with ibuprofen. I'm like, you've just cut into my body. How am I going to be okay with ibuprofen?
Yeah. Right.
Or, I'm only going to give you 5 Vicodin because you're probably going to use it more than what you need
Yeah.
to. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's getting past that. It's not putting action behind that bias that's there. And I think as healthcare providers, and I have to tell people that I work with all the time, it's like, you're going to have to check your bias there, because you're thinking that this patient is this way, or they're acting this way, or they're acting as an angry Black woman, when you have to think about everything else what's going on in their life. They have this diagnosis. They also have this other diagnosis. They also have home life that they're dealing with. Like, set aside and figure out what it is that you can help them along the way so they can feel better, at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's so cliche, but you just don't know somebody else's shoes, right?
Exactly.
You don't. And, it's back to like what you said, your own best advocate. I also think, and it has to be a courageous or brave conversation, but I also think there's real power in, setting down and saying, I want to be an equal with you. Right.
Right.
Your healthcare professional. And I don't want you to judge me because of, the color of my skin, because I'm a woman, because of, my socioeconomic, like nothing. Like, I need you to treat me like an equal and help make me well. And I think it's very brave to just cut to the chase and say that at the beginning. I mean, my story's a long time ago, 27 years, but, they just assumed everybody that was trying to like be a mom and get a job back then was a hysterical woman, and they wanted to just dope me up on Valium. You can't possibly have MS or anything else wrong with you. Just, you're a basket case. Go take a bunch of drugs and calm down. You're hysterical. And it's like, well, that's not the reason why I can't walk, right?
Right. So, yeah.
I'm really proud of you. And, I want to try to keep this agenda going on IAmPatient to make sure that, we are helping to move the needle. And I'm always open ears. So, tell me how I can help. I said that to Jasmine last week. So we talked about some of the biggest gaps. Let's go over, we talked a little bit again about sort of the unconscious bias. What are some of the other things that we can do to promote the gaps? What are the gaps and what can we do to promote them and sort of close them?
Right. I think even just for all patients, but especially women of color, the one thing that my oncologist said to me is, she said, you are the driver of this thing. I am just in the passenger seat with you, just giving you directions along the way. But you tell me how you feel that your treatment wants to go. And that just gave me so much power. So as healthcare providers, giving patients some of their power back, because they're already coming in with fears, wondering what their diagnosis is going to be, what this type of appointment's going to be from this point on. So giving the patient some of their own power back and letting them choose and giving them different options that they feel like that they're being able to be a part of the decisions that are being made for their health is an amazing feeling that everybody should have. And that's just one thing. Instead of coming in there and saying, okay, this is what you're going to do, this is how I'm telling you need to do it. It's like, no, well, let's just take a step back and let's be partners in this healthcare journey that we're having. Yeah. I know that we talked about privilege a little bit. Yeah. And I have like a great analogy for it.
Go for
especially it. Especially in this day and age, is that, whenever people hear privilege, they automatically get on the defense. Or if they hear racist or racism, it's just like, no, well, that's not me. Or like, I don't have this privilege. But I think what we have to realize is that we all have some privilege. For example, myself, I live here in Seattle. We have a really great healthcare system here. I know that 9 times out of 10, if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to get really great healthcare, no matter where I go. So that's my privilege. I know that a lot of people in my instance who have anybody else that would have been diagnosed like I was and got treatment that quick, I know that other people don't get that same type of treatment and it takes them a long time. So I know that. I
mean, you've got some people on Facebook writing that into me right now. I didn't get that quick. Yep.
Right. Or even the fact that I work in healthcare, I know that I can call the doctor that I work for and, say to him like, hey, this is kind of what's going on. Can you help me get into the best of the best? And he can get me in that quick. That's my privilege. And so I don't take that lightly. I realize that that is a privilege that I have. And so if we all start thinking that way of like, okay, let me sit back and think of what my privilege is, and then kind of check that at the door and realize that you have that privilege, and then help other people around you get that same type of access that you have. Because we all should have that same type of access, right? I shouldn't just be able to call up somebody and then get in tomorrow because I need to be seen that quick. And somebody that lives 2 miles from me can't do the same thing.
Amen.
You know?
Amen. That is so true. And you're right. And it's going to take all of us together to help change some of this stuff. So you've got quite a fan club out there. So let me read some things to you here. So, okay. Hashtag breast cancer baddies. So
Yes.
that's already up there. Another.
Hey, baddies.
Yeah. Hashtag baddies up. Hashtag stronger together. Yeah. Tisha says we just want to be heard and have a seat at the table.
Yes.
We hear you. A lot of people, the Red Devil, that's no joke. That chemo combo was nasty. Yeah, you're a thriver. So again, big fan club. If you do have a question about breast cancer or about the Breast of Us or any of the things that we're talking about, go ahead and type it in, and this lovely person to my right will hand it to me because I'm too old to do more than 2 things at once, right?
Let me shout out to all my baddies right now that are watching. I appreciate that you guys are watching right now, taking out some time from your day. So I had to give you guys all a shout out. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll send kisses. Quick kisses and virtual hugs. Because with COVID, we can't do anything else. It sucks.
I know.
Okay, newly diagnosed breast cancer ladies. What do you want to tell them?
What would I want to tell you? Of course, the cliche of like, you will be okay. You will. I understand that it's hard. Hearing that diagnosis, it's not easy. And the first thing that we all think about is death. So I get that. But just know, like I said at the beginning, like my analogy was like, as soon as I was diagnosed, it was just, let me put my head down. Let me get through what me and my best friend call the valley of death. And just put your head down and like weather the storm. You're not supposed to be making me cry. Like,
and know that, you're not alone, like this virtual world. And if anything that COVID has taught us is it's like, I heard this psychologist speaking today on the news, and I meant to go back and look it up. And he said, and I think this pertains to disease too, this whole term social distancing. He said, don't think of it that way. Physical distancing, socially connected.
Right.
And I think when you have cancer, something as scary as am I going to die, it's so important to stay connected. And I know that, that you have helped so many and will continue to be a hand holder. So I think that's another thing. What about like self-care? Did you journal? Did you, is there anything like that you would recommend?
Definitely, if you're a writer, going ahead and journal, get all of that out of your head that you have in your head, because there's so much going on. My biggest thing that I would say is to women is just get that out of your head, put it on paper, and then throw it away or burn it, whatever is like easiest for you. I didn't necessarily journal myself. I started a little bit of a blog, but there's only like 3 or 4 entries on there. And it was just because I was like, doped up on prednisone and couldn't go to sleep. Yeah. So I just needed to write something down real quick.
Yeah.
Know that you do have a community out there, just like for the Breast of Us. A lot of the breast cancer baddies that are watching, we have a private Facebook group, and we ask all different types of questions. We have fun in there. Some days, we're up here crying, kind of like you and I are doing right now. But it's just, get all of that out and find out what we say is like, whoever is your tribe. It could be one person, it could be 50 women, but you do have people that want to help you and get through this and understand what you're going through. And just know that we're here.
That's great. I'll tell you, 27 years later, I'm still blaming prednisone for this figure.
Oh, girl, let me tell you, I cannot.
Body, baby.
I cannot. And if there's any healthcare providers that are watching this, like, You got to tell your patients that they're going to gain some weight. It's going to be
Oh,
hard to get
Lord. You know, it's
because
not like I haven't had 25 years to take it off, but I'm going to keep riding that train, you know?
I am too. I'm going to write it out as long as I can because I just knew doing chemo I was going to get a six pack, and I don't have a six pack over here. So I'm like,
I
what is
love you.
going on?
You're great. That's awesome. Okay, you've got some more friends. This is awesome. I'm so happy to be here. We're happy you're here too, Louise. April, you got this, sis. To see a sis, tears of joys. I love it. All right, so kids, that's like really intense. What, you know, how'd you talk to your kids? What did you tell your kids? How have you helped, you know, your kind of your circle? How have you guys shared parenting and cancer?
So I have a son. He was 13 at the time when I was diagnosed. And the best advice that I could give to anybody that's diagnosed with anything is, you know, be as real as possible with your kids that you can. Kids are a lot more resilient than we think they are. We try to shelter them and hide them as parents because that's what you're supposed to do. But they're a lot resilient, and a lot of times they understand or they know something's going on. So I just told my son, it's just like, you know, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Like, I'm going to get through this. We'll get through it together. And I remember there's a funny story where like I was having a hot flash and I had like a scarf on my head and I was here and I forgot that he was here. So I just like ripped the scarf off of my head, and then he came around the corner and that was his first time seeing my bald head. And I just kind of looked at him and I said, "Does this bother you?" And he was just like, "No." And I'm like, okay. So then from that point, it was just easy being around him, you know, with having a bald head. So just having those conversations with them. I know one of our partners, Living Beyond Breast Cancer, they have a library of books for children that children can read, for parents that, you know, women that have been diagnosed with breast cancer. We've had a lot of women who have written blogs for us who have written books as well. One of them, her name is Shaquita. She wrote a book, you know, called, I believe it's called No Hair, Don't Care. And it was her and her daughter that wrote the book together, kind of talking about losing their hair.
We'll try to hunt it down or get the link afterwards and put it up.
I'll get links for you guys too. Marquita, she's wrote a couple of books. We've had a couple of women that have written books for us regarding, and it's good just to see, not even just for kids to see it, but also women of color to see other women of color who have been diagnosed so their kids can see kids of color that are going through the same thing and they can relate to those type of things.
Yeah. I also think there's something about, and you were hitting on it, you know, kind of appropriate information for the appropriate age and the appropriate time. You know what I mean? Like sometimes like what you might tell your 13-year-old is going to be different than somebody tells their
5-year-old. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And the most interesting thing that I think too is, and I've seen this over the years in my work and even in my own life, you know, you're coming up at that 5-year survivor mark and you don't want to be thinking about breast cancer every day, all day. I don't want to be thinking about MS every day, all day, even though it's always just somewhere in the back of my mind. But so I kind of quit talking about it, like to my family. It's like, okay, I'm good. I got this.
Right.
And I didn't know, you know, my daughter's 32 years old now. She recently told me, you know, like she still has some anxiety over worrying about what was going to happen to me. I was very ill too. I had a bunch of other things besides MS that happened. Was I going to die or not be there? And how am I? And, you know, I learned kind of a lesson in like, I probably needed to continue to provide information on my journey and not just be like, okay, well, I'm not in a wheelchair anymore, so don't worry about it.
Right.
I think that there's something there too, to just, you know, let people know you're feeling okay or you're doing good and what survivorship means to you.
Right. I know even now, like if I tell my son, like I have a cold or I'm going to the doctor, he kind of just looks and I'm like, okay, but I'm okay. Like it's just a cold or this is just a regular checkup. Like you said, so definitely just reassuring them, because just like we have anxiety of, you know, what's going to happen or I'm going to the doctor for this, they have those same anxieties too. It's one thing that I always say is, not only are you diagnosed, but your friends and family are diagnosed as well. And they're just diagnosed in a different way. And I think if we can all remember that together, it's easier for us to take it in and digest it, because they are diagnosed and they just have to figure out how they're going to handle this, like how they're going to talk to you, how they're going to approach, and they're fighting a battle that they are. It's just completely different.
That's really brilliant what you just said. That is great. That might be the best thing I've heard about the family component in a long time. So tell me a little bit about the Breast of Us from your perspective. We had the great Jasmine tell us about it, but let's tell us about it again.
So, for everybody that doesn't know, for the Breast of Us, we are the first online platform for women of color diagnosed with breast cancer. We started a little bit over a year ago, and it's a platform where women can write in their stories and experiences on breast cancer, either, when they were diagnosed, how they're dealing with life after cancer. We also have a page dedicated to my friend Christina that we talked about called Christina's Corner, and that highlights and represents all of our baddies who are metastatic and that have triple negative breast cancer, which of course is one of the most aggressive breast cancers out there. But for the Breast of Us, we're out here, we're making some noise. We've got our baddies out there. They're definitely sharing with all of their friends and family what we're doing. And it's just great to see. It's something that I wish when I was diagnosed about 4 years ago, that I had this platform to go to and realize that I wasn't alone. There were other women out there who looked like me, who had the same type of family backgrounds and could relate to what I was going through. So I love For the Breast of Us. I love everything that we are doing, and I hope that we just keep continuing to grow.
I do too. I think you will. I've spent a lot of career, and I can just, there's times you just can see like talent, and you and Jasmine are just off the charts. I mean, you will make this like bloody successful. I just know it, and the time is right. And what I think is great about the story is you wish you had it, so you went and built it. I mean,
right?
Just how can that not be successful?
Right. Yes, Jasmine and I always said, like, we didn't have a table, so we built our own, and now we have these chairs, and everybody else can just come and sit down with us. If you're out there, come on, just come.
That's great.
We'll invite
That's
you.
Great. We'll get them out there. So, so what's on deck for you next? What are some of the other things you like to do? And tell me about COVID. COVID's, making me crazy. I do well, and then I turn into a nut, and then I'm, So what's on deck for you next? And any advice to everybody out there with, some type of cancer and this stupid COVID?
Yes. So COVID, yes, it has put a damper on a lot of us. My son actually graduated from high school just a couple of months ago, and he is heading to college in about less than a month down to Arizona. So that should be interesting.
Is he going, or is it online?
As of now, he is still going. I mean, Arizona and Florida, they're kind of fighting for, who's going to get the best record for doing dumb shit, I guess. But I didn't really say that. But I agree. He is, so that's kind of on my agenda. I'm getting him ready for that. I am going to plug real quick. Tonight, we are hosting our, what we call Baddies Talk Back. It is we do it once a month. It is our Facebook Live podcast, and we have different topics that we talk about. So tonight we are going to be talking about grief. So it's based on a couple of blogs, but one of them is one that I had written called Grieving the Friends We Love and the Bodies That We Lost, which is, it's a great topic. It's not only talking about some of the women that we've met in the community who have passed on, but it's also talking about us losing the person that we were before we were diagnosed. And it's one of the things that I always say, like every once in a while, I look at myself in the mirror and I catch a glimpse of the person that I was. And after I finished treatment, I'd be like, okay, she's coming back. Like I'm coming back into this person that I was before. But now being almost 5 years out, I'm realizing like, I'm okay that I left her behind. I actually like this person that I am right now. So I'm glad to look in the mirror and see that, she's still there and I still have parts of her, but I'm also happy and proud of the person that I am right now. So
I'm really happy of the person you are. You're an incredible person. Really incredible. And Jasmine and you are just great. And it's been a total honor to talk to you both and get to know you. And I will be you're sing it from the rooftops. I will be a biggest champion and supporter in any way I can to get the word out. And I actually have a few ideas. So while I'm sitting here, I was scratching notes down of like things to do, ways to
Yeah.
use some of the influence I have. Um,
Thank you.
for
Thank you. Thank you.
to move the needle forward.
Yeah.
Any more questions that we've got here? Another show.
Oh, but if anybody wants to watch tonight, it's going to be tonight. Oh, you can go to our Facebook page for the Breast of Us. We'll be live there.
And Facebook page. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's at one more time.
For the Breast of Us, Baddies Talk Back at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time is when we will be going live. And you'll see myself, Jasmine, my co-founder, business partner, and friend. And it's just like a girls chat. We'll have two other baddies on there, April and Monisha. They'll be talking about the blogs that they wrote. And it's just a good time hour. Bring whatever you want to drink, whatever your libation is, wine, vodka, Welch's, whatever you want. And everybody's invited.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you for giving that shout out. And again, it's just been, I've loved every guest that we've had on this program, but the last 2 weeks learning from you ladies. And again, breast cancer has, does hold a near and dear place for me. I mean, both my aunt and my grandmother are breast cancer survivors on my father's side. And two of my dear high school friends, one is 7 years out. I mentioned her last week. And unfortunately, one of them didn't make it and lost her battle at a very, very young age. So it's really great to also highlight, breast cancer and make sure that it gets the attention that it deserves. So I just want to.
Hopefully soon we'll just eradicate this whole disease and we won't have to be worrying about this anymore, right?
No, I hope so. I hope so. So I just want to continue wishing you the absolute best of health.
Thank you.
Like I said, I know that just even more great things are in y'all's future. So thanks for being here with me today. Again, here's a big virtual kiss and a hug.
I appreciate it. And hopefully we will join you again. I love this.
I hope so too. I have a feeling you will. We'll get you together. And you lifted me up today too. I've been sick for the last 2 days thinking, oh my God, is it COVID? So the fact that I got through a half an hour without coughing, I'm pretty sure, like you told me at the beginning before we went on air, don't worry, it's just allergies. So so I hope so. All right, everybody. So again, the Breast of Us, give a shout out. Please spread the word. You've had 2 incredible weeks with 2 incredible women, and this is something that we all need to do. We're one people. And humanity and health and raising up our fellow humankind is the way we should all be behaving in today's world. So here's my little lecture. Be kind, be supportive, don't be judgmental, wash your hands and wear the damn mask. So I wish you a wonderful weekend with lots of love. I think I'm taking a hiatus next week. I've penciled in a vacation for myself, but the last time I did that, I didn't take one. So I'm not sure if you'll see me next week or not. So if I'm
take a vacation.
Yeah, if I'm not here live, maybe we'll push out a best of. And until we all meet again, everybody take care. Thanks for joining us. And it's me wishing you the best of health. Thanks again, Marissa.
Bye,
take care, everybody. Lots of love. And again, don't forget our podcast tonight. Bye, everybody. Bye.